Hello, Dr. Lydia. This is really an honor to have you on our podcast. This is episode 5 of the Partner Intelligence podcast. And what we typically talk about, as I mentioned when I first reached out to you and we had a little chat, is what we're doing here, with my company, which I'm not going to talk about, but we're creating, and let's call it a ecosystem fabric to help technology companies connect to each other and collaborate with each other as they pursue large enterprise deals here in the US and globally. And so we've built, you could think of it as a layer of intelligence. We've used agentic AI to connect these companies so that they can really collaborate on some of these really large deals. But enough about that. I'm not going to talk about what we've built. This is not an ad. This is really here to welcome you, and I'd really like to say that first of all, I really appreciate your time. You're a very important person, and I would really like to the audience to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Lidia Esther Aviles. Is it Aviles or is it Aviles?
In Belgium, for French people, they say Avil.
Avil. Okay,
Aviles.
okay. So we're gonna go with Aviles because here in the US we're closer. And Dr. Aviles, is the founder and CEO of AELSTONE. AELSTONE is a Brussels-based foresight and strategic intelligence company. And this is what really got me curious about what you're doing and to see if there's some intersect in what we're doing. And you're focused on, of course, and this is really fascinating, the intersection of innovation, industry, and policy. And you're sitting right there in the heart of where policy is being made in Europe, right? Which is Belgium, and you're in Brussels. Are you in Brussels?
Brussels, yes.
You're in
Yes.
Brussels. Fantastic, fantastic. It really, truly is an honor. So, Dr. Lydia, welcome to the Partner Intelligence podcast. I would love for our audience to hear from you a little bit about AELSTONE, of course, and also its partnership with and this is something that really fascinates me, is how you're partnering with the European Innovation Council. This is a very important council that is behind a lot of the developments and new technologies and AI. And tell us a little bit about what it means to be, and you mentioned this last time, you said you're an official member of the United Nations Global Alliance of AI for Manufacturing, which is really interesting, right? Because Europe is really at the center of the right manufacturing and advancements and robotics and all of this. So enough for me. I'll hand the mic over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You can start a little bit with your background. You have a very interesting personal background, and then tell us about what you do.
Yeah. So, I like to be humble about it, but I talk a lot, so it doesn't match sometimes. I just like learning in general. And after studying global management and international affairs, eventually ended up in finance. But I can tell you that a little bit of the background is that working in mobility for global sector, and then working for aviation for global sector, and then for energy, and then investment, all of them for global sector. It gave me a little bit the helicopter view of this intersection that naturally came afterwards. So AELSTONE was born with the idea to help. And actually, we at the beginning, we had the mission for accelerate SDG 17, that we thought it was partnerships and collaboration, one of the key components. I think all of them are important, obviously, but we thought that was a very demanding and something that we can do easily, or at least at the beginning, that it was only me. It's like I could do easily that because I lived in different regions. I know, what the US is trying to say, what Europe is trying to say. And sometimes I translate that, even if it's in the same English language. But that intersection and cross-sector support idea came because I saw that was lacking. And there was a lot of work in silos. And naturally, when you work in silos in different sectors, nothing advanced because you think you're doing your own thing that maybe already exists in a different sector with a different application. So when you interact with other sectors, you have the advantage to share this knowledge and eventually. So that was kind of like a little bit of how AELSTONE was born. And then when it came into, before it was born, in the process of being in Brussels, etc., like, I don't know if you're familiar, but we call this a little bubble, or the Brussels bubble. So everyone knows each other. It's kind of natural because it's the same as Silicon Valley. Like here, like you all know each other or with each other. And so because of that, I ended up like in the ecosystem of the European Innovation Council. At the time, they didn't have these partnership options. That it was only developed later. And they have obviously different layers of that. So you have like corporate partners and then you have like service partners. So we are a service partner, but because we were already doing that naturally, organically before. So what that means is that we help startups to expose themselves. We help them to navigate what is the A to Z from the innovation that they are already there. We work basically with the beneficiaries, which is called like the ones who had been awarded, and then help them through the challenges that they come through the data valley, like the valley of death and things like that. So that's a little bit like a niche or something. We can go in deep with that. We became official members with the UN Global Alliance of AI for Manufacturing when I think it was at the end of 2023, 6 months only after, because of the support that we were aiming to give to the companies and so on. And we were already active. So I was already active in all the different sectors, and I was already participating and providing expertise whenever it was needed. And it's something that I really enjoyed. So I still enjoy it, but I have less time than before. And so I was, here and there participating in things. I've been, I don't know, like I can say lucky. I was at the beginning of social media back in Massachusetts when it was happening. I was already in Brussels when sustainability started to happen. Now I'm in innovation in the center of all. So I feel like knowing a little bit of everything in the beginnings of the things, it breaks a different story because it's not something that I acquire, it's something that I live through, So that feeling of belonging, it's something that if I feel like I know because it feels like I am part of it. So it's not something that just fell on me, something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
far.
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how sometimes you almost stumble upon your passion and your ikigai, right? The Japanese call it ikigai, right? It's your passion, it's helping you make money. At the same time, you're making a difference to the world, and everything is just kind of coming together. That happened to me quite late in life, but it's fascinating how not only are you at the intersection of, these different things that you spoke about, innovation and AI and sustainability, but you've also traversed a lot of different cultures. You're from originally from, I believe, Latin America, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, and you've lived in the US and now you're living in Europe. And so you've really been at the crossroads, not just of different technologies and innovations and public sector and private sector, but also at the intersection of a lot of different cultures. And you speak a lot of languages, right? How many languages do you speak?
Right now, 5, and I'm learning the 6th.
Only
Yeah,
five. Okay.
only 5. I, after the second and the third, you are very familiar with this as well because you speak more than 2. Normally, the next one feels easier, but it also depends if it's the same alphabet and if you have the foundations or not, and then depends if you practice. Like for example, in Belgium, you have 3 official languages, but like you have Dutch, French, and German. But the corporate language, for some reason, is still English. And also,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, we have all the different institutions here, like NATO, Eurocontrol, the European Parliament, the Council, and also the Commission. So still,
Mm-hmm.
English is like part of the main-ish working language.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And what I loved about what you just said in the opening is you spoke about silos, that we shouldn't work in silos, and that really resonates with the work that I'm doing. Of course, I'm doing work on a much smaller scale than you are. We're trying to break the silos between technology companies and the way they co-sell and the way they go to market together. So of course, it's a big industry. The technology industry is a $6 trillion industry, and 70% of that goes through the channel. And so there's a lot of collaboration and of course the cloud. But it's on a much smaller scale in the grand scheme of things because you're working on innovation and cooperation on a global scale across industries and across borders. So that's really fascinating. The question that I really wanted to ask you next is I want to hit on sustainability a little bit because I know this is a subject that's close to your heart. It's a subject close to my heart and the heart of millions of people. My daughter will sometimes say, Daddy, don't use AI. Don't you don't need to use AI. Do you know what's going on when you hit that button? You know, there's rivers being polluted and our skies being polluted, and this is not good. And so the new generation seems to have a very different idea or opinion of the advantages and disadvantages of AI. But the question that I really would love to ask you that's on the minds of a lot of people is, can AI and sustainability coexist?
Yeah, I think in honest way, it's very complex, and I can tell you a little bit what I think, my opinion behind that, but also, where it comes from. AI was built when we already had frameworks measuring sustainability. When we built everything before that, we didn't have the frameworks already established. And I mean, we're still discovering some of these frameworks, some of the data that we need, etc., to decide if something is sustainable or not. But we tend to compare, let's say, AI with something that we didn't know. It was polluting, we didn't know it was damaging, and we're still discovering many other things. Like I wrote an academic article, for example, about space and sustainability, and also seismology and sustainability, and so on. So my point with AI is that it's like under the microscope from everyone because the frameworks were already established. So from the moment we ignited AI, we know like the polluting is happening, how much is being used and how much is degrading the planet and right away. So like from the moment that it was accelerated. And if we're going to continue into that, of course, we're going to know more. But if we go backwards, for example, to the space and how, a space was polluting basically the sea, but also the stratosphere and so on, we will realize that there is probably more polluting happening there. So it's just a comparison. It's not something that I don't want to get into the fight with Elon on that. But my point behind that is that because we know from the beginning how much it's costing, then it looks like it's more than something else. But we already know that there are many other things that are polluting. And now when we go backwards to what really sustainability is, in my opinion, sustainability is something that can sustain itself and then respecting all the frameworks of nature. And if I go deep into my heart, what I mean by sustainability is to take care of the planet as if it was my home. So I don't have to wait for my roof to fall over me, but I will maintain it so like this, the roof stays there always. And I have experienced hurricanes in different places where I lived. I have experienced earthquakes where different places that I lived. So when this thing happened and the infrastructure is not correctly done and it's not sustainable, that it doesn't coexist with nature, then it's more fragile. And because of that, then it's more vulnerable. And then again, we go back to what really sustainability is. It's not only about the corporate ESGs counting how much dollars we are, putting here, putting there. No, it's a long-term view of how we are coexisting with nature, really, or are we taking over and then by default we are killing ourselves, So it's like a complex character. So I think AI can eventually coexist because now we know how. But is it really at the point that we can also decide we can simply just shut it down and that's it? If we still consider, if at some point we think it's dangerous, we simply shut it down and that's it. We don't really need it.
Yep. What people are talking about a kill switch, right? And hopefully this AI doesn't get so super intelligent that it doesn't allow us to hit the kill switch. That would be very sad.
Yes.
But sustainability is something that worries me, especially when I hear of some very, very powerful people, and I think you know who I'm talking about, that are already planning on creating settlements on other planets. Does that mean that we're preparing for a plan B? When we destroy our planet, we need another planet to go to? It's a little bit, makes me feel a little bit uneasy, to be quite honest with you, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. That's fantastic. This is a great segue into, we spoke about sustainability. It's a great segue into now, what is the public-private partnership? How is that playing into this? You're a contributor to the World Bank Group and also to a lot of European innovation and stakeholder ecosystems. Tell us a little bit about the state of this ecosystem in Europe. How are these players working together? How is the public and the private sector working together? Is there a set of well-defined goals? Is there a plan? Because sometimes it feels, especially here in the US, that we're just letting AI go wild and to see what happens. And then we say, okay, now we need to take a step back and we need to introduce some regulations. But tell us about how you're addressing this in Europe.
Well, I can tell you what I see. So in Europe, for example, there is as you probably know, the AI code. I participated as a stakeholder expert in the pre-policy when it was being drafted. And now, of course, it's published, so we can have a look on that. Still, it's not a per se regulation. It's more about an advice of conduct, how the companies should be responsible and think responsibly about it. But when you consider the whole spectrum of AI, I think one of the main problems, in my opinion, that we see not only in one region, but all the regions, is that most of the users of AI don't understand what really AI is. An application and applying a technology is not the technology per se. So this is something that sometimes people are neglecting. And in this case, sometimes the policymakers are not fully aware of this because probably, let's start from the beginning, they are very busy and then they get the brief reports from different people. And then sometimes maybe these people also don't know by reasons that we don't know also. So it happens that sometimes the decisions come from a cloud and not directly from a full, like a field expert. But coming back again, the efforts that I see are exaggerated. Like the efforts of the commission is doing, the council are doing into implementing the code of conduct in general are, as you know, protecting, or at least the idea to protect the population for different things. For example, one of the things that we have very strong is the GDPR. And this is something that any European can tell you it's very grateful for. So that feeling of, security, but also complaining, it's like you can never have it. You can never have it with the people. It's very difficult for companies to actually accelerate so much and faster with all these restraints, obviously. But then again, the same people feel protected by it. So it's a complex story. And I always comment on, usually when we are in these stakeholder meetings, you have different experts. Sometimes I am in the energy meetings and sometimes I are in the AI or investment. It depends on what. And all you hear, there are no questions. The people are complaining. That's the question, a complaint. And I always, try to put things in perspective from a helicopter view. Again, the privilege to be in intersection is that leadership is not easy. You can never be the gold coin that everyone is going to like. Never. No matter what you do or the intentions that you have, like, I don't think purposely people are bad intended. I think they are trying the best in their own mind. Even if you don't agree with it, in their own head, they are trying to do the best. So it's like, trying to understand that, and also the people that are surrounding them, and how the complexity of executing a regulation or a policy comes into play, or how the policy is being drafted with so many layers, and especially technology that was built in-house. So it's even more because you have to understand it already built. And not something that you saw growing like a baby. So, so many things like that come into structures of what is governance and how that applies into application sector and so on. So my opinion is that they're trying the best, and yeah, it's not easy, but
it's not easy, and it's not a one size fits all, right? I mean, you can't have a blanket policy across all industries, consumer business. There's of course a lot of controversy around social media, for instance, in Europe and other parts of the world. But again, policies that you apply to consumer space and protecting, let's say, children and young adults, it's a different policy. To protecting business data is different to protecting privacy for consumers is different. How we're applying AI in the public sector and in certain sectors like manufacturing and what my company is doing applying it in technology. So it's not a one size fits all. It's quite a complex problem.
yeah.
Fantastic. It's there are more questions than answers, I think, is what we're realizing here.
Yeah, it's like,
I'd love to also touch on one other important subject, which I find fascinating about the work that your company is doing, which is, you're advising startups, scale-ups, corporations, public sector institutions, and investors on growth strategy, on ecosystem positioning, industrial transformation, that's a big thing, and also how decisions are going to be made in the future, right? How are we going to organize ourselves as companies? This whole system of a hierarchy, right? The corporate hierarchy seems to be going away, and we're seem to be moving towards a more decentralized, loosely coupled organization based on functions, right? Versus the SVP reporting to the CEO, right? So the world is changing. AI is changing not just the way we do work, but how we're doing the work and how we organize ourselves to do the work. But I'd love to ask you if you have any advice for US companies, particularly that are trying to enter Europe. Any advice for them at all? Is there, of course, you've got the usual suspects, you've got the compliance, and we are a startup, and we're being told, of course, very strongly that unless we have GDPR in our solutions, that we're not going to sell anything in Europe. But any advice on the technology side, cultural side, business side? Where do I, if I'm a startup, I'm in the US, where do I even start? Who do I talk to if I want to expand into Europe?
yeah. Well, I think one of the first things to consider is, well, positioning, right? Like, again, it depends on the technology that you are developing or the type of service that you are hoping to provide. It also comes to which country you can land first. That, as just to give you an example, is similar to the US, that you have a lot of academia in the Northwest and also some finance, and then you have like a lot of holiday stuff in the South, and then you have obviously Silicon Valley that it's well known for its innovation. So similar to each part has a developed sector, something like that happens as well in Europe. So depending on what you want to, let's say, do, then the country that you will hope to land. And one of the things, we actually have that option in the company. We help companies that are coming from outside to position themselves in Europe. And we are a little bit what they call it, the public affairs arm, because big corporates, they obviously have an office here, and they have like a policy offices, they call it. But startups don't have that capacity or capability to have their own big office with so many. So we help, let's say, startups to navigate that part, because in order to establish yourself in Europe, you need to understand regulation, and regulation is very different here than in the US. So it's about understanding the matrix of how and where to find the documents. And I can tell you something, all of it is public. It's just that it's different system. That's it. So we help those companies navigate that. So like where to look, what to appreciate, understand what is a pre-policy, understand what it's an advice only, all that thing. So if it's not me, you can still go through a different advisor, of course. That can help you out. Most of the times you can find one in any country as well. So I am just, again, lucky enough to be in Brussels. It's in a good position for the center of what's happening everywhere. And we have that, lucky capability to be around and to see right out of the oven what's next. So, and to tell you the truth,
Fantastic.
as you mentioned, yeah, as you mentioned before, we are looking at the future. So we are actually developing a tool that it's a company eventually still in the stealth mode, but about the future. And we are concentrating on the origins. So we have practiced Foresight. I have practiced Foresight for the last 20 years, and I have a clean record on that. But want to help more companies through a tool and not just through me, because as you can imagine, it's very difficult. And we sometimes prepare a pre-policy into Foresight and wait for it, and then it happens immediately, so we implement it right away. We don't have to wait for the, So it's, again, privileged and lucky enough.
That's fantastic. And I'm so honored that in this small podcast of mine that you've told our audience here in the US and around the world about your plans. It sounds really interesting and exciting, this platform that you're building. So it's not just services, it's also a technology, it's a package. It's, we used to call it software as a service, and we still call it software as a service. And now we're turning into an age of service as software, right? Which is an interesting twist and a flip on how we're looking at AI and delivering software, not just as a system that people operate, but also providing those virtual assistants that know how to operate, right, the software and know how to make sense out of the data, right, and help you with action. So it's a fascinating world how services and software they're coming together. Dr. Lydia, thank you so much for your time and insights into how AI and sustainability can coexist. I would encourage the audience, if you have plans to expand into Europe, please do get in touch with Dr. Lydia. Dr. Lydia, what's the best way of getting in touch with you? Are you on
Probably
LinkedIn
to,
or?
yeah, I think LinkedIn is the fast way. You can find me as my name, Dr. Lidia Esther Aviles, and the company AELSTONE. But thank you, Latif. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. We have already spoken before, but it's nice to have this conversation, and I hope that the people in your audience appreciate this and also contribute. Sometimes when we say some things are developing at the moment and something changes, so it's very good to have the ecosystem really functioning and participating live sometimes. So if something has changed in the middle of the conversation, please, I invite the audience to put it in the comments or whatever that they need and contribute, because like we all need each other. So there is nothing we can do alone.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect way of ending it because AI innovation and sustainability is not a European thing, it's not a US thing, it's not an Asian thing, it's us thing, it's a planetary thing. And as you said at the beginning, you like to think of the planet as being our home, or as your home, and we're all a family living in a way in the same home. So let's make sure we're treating it properly. For the audience, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please chime in, add your comments below. We would love to hear your thoughts. And hopefully we'd love to have you, Dr. Lydia, back on again at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.